everybody, I'm Eric the Counselor.
And I'm Des Perry.
This is a lifestyle show
About improving your mental health.
You ready?
Let's experience mental health.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Eric the Counselor checking in with you guys. And you are tuned in to another episode of Experience Mental Health. We're still doing this thing from social distancing. I am not at the house. I am in the office, but I am in here by myself. I am out and about. Yes, I am out and about, so don't judge me. I am out and about.
Definitely judge you.
Well, I got a mask, though.
I was going to say, where's your mask?
I got a mask. It's in the car. Got gloves. I got a whole box of gloves and everything. So I'm doing my part. And I hope you guys are doing your part. Like, this thing is for real. Like, you got to do social distancing.
It is.
You know, washing your hands, not sneezing in people's faces, not coughing. You really need to do your part to try to protect everybody, because some people, like the young millennials, like Des, y'all don't think y'all can get sick. You know, everybody can get sick.
But you know what? I am doing my part. I am here currently, as you can see. I am here in my home, sitting at my desk. I'm not out and about. You know what I'm saying? No need for me to get a mask because I'm here. I stay here. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We go and maybe get groceries and we come right back to the house. And we've been here since.
Good.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Finally. You finally got the point.
Responsible.
Yes. So look, folks, we're committed to still bringing you the show. Today we have a great guest. We're going to be talking about adverse childhood experiences, which might be something that you've never heard of before. We're going to break it down today and make it digestible for any person. So if you are ever, if you've ever wondered what it is when you hear ACEs, or it's really what you mostly hear it referred to as, you don't really hear people say adverse childhood experiences.
Right.
Actually,
I mean, you know, that's something that I see quite often, but I never fully understood what it is. And so, like I said, that's why I'm kind of glad for our guest today, who can definitely go into depth about what ACES is and some of the stuff that she is doing. So we have Sherri on the guest. Sherri, tell me your last name.
Jones.
Sherri Jones.
On the show. Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you. Like we mentioned before, today we're going to kind of be breaking down ACEs, which is the adverse childhood experiences, correct?
Correct.
All right. So
before we do that, let me ask you. So Sherri is also the founder of an organization called Dream Chasers of Tennessee. What are you guys doing over at Dream Chasers?
Well, right now we're kind of, especially since where I am in therapy, we're working. I won't say that without giving away too many details, but we started off as a scholarship organization. And people who know about Dream Chasers of Tennessee, we based in Collierville, Tennessee, which is really close to Memphis. For those of you who do not know where Collierville, Tennessee is.
West Tennessee.
Yes. So we kind of just have what I call Dream Chasers Days, where that was just to provide community education to the youth as far as information about different colleges, different careers, of course, mental health aspect things, and just fun. Like, we've had cheerleaders from different schools come out.
Sherri, where you go?
Dream Chasers events we used to pay to church. And my
I was going to say, I think your signal went out a little bit on us.
It says my internet connection is unstable.
Oh, you cool. Let's roll with it. We're going to make it work. Yeah. So you said you guys are located in Collierville, Tennessee? Mm-hmm. Is that where you are? Or are you in Nashville?
I'm in Nashville.
Okay.
So
cool.
Collierville is where I'm from. And so I always kind of try and bring it home. But that's what I mean. It started in 2013, I want to say, when I was getting my master's. And so now that I'm actually a Nashville resident, I will say that finally, I'm just expanding it as we are Dream Chasers of Tennessee. So I don't want to just limit it to one place.
So I'm going to be honest. It broke up a little bit when you were telling us about what it was. Could you re-explain to us what Dream Chasers does? Because I couldn't hear you clearly.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that the audience can hear it too.
Of course. So we're just an organization that provides just positive thinking and just give kids just a new way to think about life and let them know, like, hey, I'm a girl from where you guys came from. If I can do it, you can definitely do it too. And when I say do it, just go after my dreams and accomplish them. So we've had local participation from local churches, local schools. We've had colleges here in Nashville, TSU, FIST, Lipscomb come to Memphis for Dream Chasers Day. Been at University of Memphis for one Dream Chasers Day, but overall, just an organization to encourage you, like, you don't have to be what you see every day. You can be better than that. And coming from me, who, as we're talking about ACES, who experienced a lot of adverse childhood experiences, that's my main thing behind Dream Chasers is no matter what you go through, it fuels you for your purpose on this earth. And so just putting that inspiration into youth is what Dream Chasers is all about.
That's awesome. I don't know if did you mention when did you all start Dream Chasers?
2013 is what I want to say. So it came after. Go ahead.
Well, I think you was about to answer, but basically, what is it that made you want to start? A company like Dream Chasers. So
I went to, and that's where this scarf comes from. That's why I have it on. Kisumu, Kenya, during my time at Lipscomb. And when I was there, I ended up being a leader. And it was surprising to me, but my classmates came and they just kept telling me how the kids were following me around. And even the kids in Africa, they were listening to my story and they were just like, wow, you did that. Your life is just like mine. And even while I was there, it hit me like, hey, I'm in Africa encouraging these kids that no matter what you're going through, you can be somebody. You can do whatever you put your mind to do. And coming from that trip, it let me know, like, hey, if I'm in Africa and I can inspire the kids there, let me come home and do it in my community. And it was, and I just say how God works. When I got home, one of my childhood friends who, after high school, I didn't know how bad he had gotten on drugs, but he had gotten on drugs to the point where he killed his grandmother. And that was very traumatic for my entire community. So with me wanting to inspire the youth, it just put it on my heart. And I went straight to the park that we all hung out with every day as a kid, which is Harris Park in Collierville. And just had a big Dream Chasers Day, just a positive day to let kids know, drugs, alcohol, partying, it's fun, but that's not what you base your life off of. Right. And so every Dream Chasers Day has a theme, and that first year's theme was, if I can do it, you can do it too. And that's kind of like, if I can get over this stuff that's around me, you can go to school or whatever it is that you dream of doing.
That's awesome work.
That is awesome.
It reminds me of All the King's Men, the work we were doing as I'm the founder of a mentoring.
I've heard of that before.
So it's like, I love it when people find a purpose and just do it. Like, we didn't know anything about running a nonprofit when we did it. We just started providing something that we wish we would have had when we were younger.
Yes.
So kudos to you for
Thank you.
Dream Chasers. Are you gonna have a day? What is it? A Dream Chasers?
Dream Chasers Day. Stay tuned for details.
Maybe when we open back up.
Dream Chasers.
Right. That's awesome. Awesome. Man, that is so awesome.
Thank
you. Des, you got anything?
Well, one thing because right before we move on, I know you was talking about when you was over in Africa, you was telling some of your story to the children over there. You was inspiring. I mean, I feel like that's one of the things that I love to have the guest on, to kind of share a story, you know what I'm saying, of something that you overcame, you know what I'm saying? Like you mentioned, if I can do it, you can do it too. Like, what were some of the stories that you shared with some of those children over in Africa that kind of inspired them to, be a little better, do a little better?
Okay, so one of the biggest stories, and I'm gonna say this without getting emotional. Now you're talking about the story part, but
I got some tissues.
The story piece is virtual reaching.
It wouldn't be right if I didn't have some Kleenex
with it. Being in Africa, it really, and I encourage every African American, definitely, it's not a cliche to say you get back to your roots, but I really felt just being at home. Like I was so comfortable being over there while my classmates were just, you know, taking all kind of anxiety medication and just like really uncomfortable and feeling unsafe there. But for me, I felt safe. The safety feeling as with trauma, sometimes when you experience a trauma and you're in survival mode, as we'll talk about when we get into ACEs, it can be a smell, it can be a touch, it can just be something that triggers your memory. So being in Africa kind of triggered my memory of just family. And I come from a close-knit family. Like we have each other's back no matter what. And that's the hardest part. That was the hardest part about me being in Africa and with me transitioning to Nashville was being away from my family. Family is important to me because I was raised by my grandma due to just different ACEs of domestic violence and parents, substance abuse kind of things, and just witnessing a lot and sexual abuse at a young age as well. And there were kids over there in particular. There was this one young lady who she ran to us because she said she didn't go home that night. And she didn't go home because she was going to get beat by her mom. And she was going to get beat by her mom because she was studying. And instead of studying, her mom wanted her to prostitute. And so just little stories like that touched me, but also let me know, like, this is going on in Black America as well. And so talking to those kids and talking to those girls about, you know, don't let your life situations get you down. Like, those are things that you overcome because they make you who you are. One of my favorite quotes is, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. So I always, even over there, I was teaching kids, what is your why? What do you want to do? So yeah, it was inspiring because of just the love that they had, and they were very receptive to it. But so receptive, they wanted to come move with me and live with me. So set some boundaries there as well.
You didn't have any space for them.
I didn't have any space for them, but hey, I'm working on it. That's what, like you said, Eric, as far as starting a nonprofit and not knowing, I just came home and started calling places and it's like, hey, I'm trying to do this, trying to do this. I think I had maybe like 2 Dream Chasers days before we were officially a nonprofit. And the only reason why I went to the 501c3 status is because people are like, who are you?
Right. Well, keep it going. It takes a special person to want to serve people in that way. And I encourage you to keep it going. We did All the King's Men for 11 years.
Oh, wow.
Before we decided to pivot, and that's when I became a therapist. And so I do still have a vision to bring All the King's Men back to active status and then incorporate the mental health component. But everything is in due timing. Everything is in due time.
Yeah.
So good work. Keep it going.
Thank you.
You know, I salute you. Definitely.
Right. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So let's do this. Let's jump into today's topic, which is ACEs. And you've already started to talk a little bit about it. But so let's kind of like set the stage for our listeners, because I'm assuming that most people listening are not going to know what ACEs is. If you do, that's great. But we want to break it down to where the average person can understand what ACEs is and how it plays a role in mental health today. So tell us about what ACEs is. Let's start with that. Tell us about what is ACEs.
Okay. And I'm going to give you a textbook definition, but then I'm going to go into my own.
Yeah, let's do that.
Of it. Textbook definition of ACEs is, it's a CDC study, and it found that adverse childhood experiences, which is where you get the acronym ACEs from, the adverse childhood experiences uncovered a stunning link between childhood trauma and chronic diseases in people develop as adults, as well as social and emotional problems. These diseases and problems include things like heart disease, lung cancer, diabetes, many of the autoimmune diseases that you see in the Black community, as well as depression, violence, being a victim of violence, and suicide. Things such as lung cancer is also in there, but they found this by people who they narrowed it down to 10 types of childhood trauma. Now, a trauma is anything that you go through that is overwhelming. Any overwhelming emotional experience for you is labeled a trauma. So it could look like what's in this study, physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, or you can have just different things, especially if you're a child. You can have a parent who's an alcoholic, or a mother who's a victim of domestic violence, or a family member who's in jail, or a family member that's diagnosed with a mental illness, and or having the disappearance of a parent through divorce, death, or abandonment. So each trauma that you go through counts as one, and a person who has been diagnosed with an ACEs score of 3 or more, they have a higher chance of developing these physical illnesses. And the basic connection with that is with ACEs, mental health affects your physical health. And that's where the CDC study came from. When we go into the doctors, we're always describing like, I can't catch my breath or something's going on. But sometimes, well, a lot of times doctors are not examining the mental aspect. Can you not catch your breath because you've been stressed for 6 months because you've been abused? Can you not catch your breath because you're every day triggered by something that happened in your childhood? So this ACEs, and why I'm an advocate for it, is it just challenges doctors and mental health providers to dig deeper to help people.
So did you say if you have 3 or more of any of these experiences, family member in jail, separation of parents, if you have 3 or more, that means you are higher likelihood to develop issues later in life. So I'm just thinking, like, how many of us have, I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah. You was listing like some very common things, like, you know, that many people have experienced. And just to say that, you know, just having one of those is a point, and you having 3 or more, you know, so I feel like it's a lot of people out there, and like even some of our listeners who may have a score of 3 or more, you know, which is kind of scary.
So, wow, that is, like, I'm thinking, like, I definitely had some adverse childhood experiences. So when did do you know when the study started? When did the CDC started studying ACEs? I won't put you on the spot. If you don't know, it's all good.
You put me on the spot. I can't give you an exact answer. I don't know. I can't give you an exact answer on that.
Though. The reson I'm asking is because, and I'm familiar with ACEs. I've sat on panels with ACEs. Des and I, you've actually reported me on a panel. So I don't know either. But I'm just wondering when they started it, because I would say a lot of African Americans would have a high ACEs score. I feel like we would have a high ACEs score. And hold on. Oh, I got the reverb on. Hold on.
That's what I'm saying.
Technical stuff. I got you. So talk to us about, like, when should you take this study? Because it doesn't really, if you're grown already, you don't really need to take an adverse childhood experiences study. Is that true, or am I?
Now, I was gonna say that don't trigger me. Of course, you need to take an adverse childhood experiences study if you're grown and you never have taken it before. Okay. Because if you're grown, what I find out, me working with kids, I also have to work with their parents. And parents go through so much that they do not process. When I say process, think about trauma like a wound. Trauma is like this big bear in the room that you don't want to think about, because if you think about it, you're overwhelmed. And brain, we don't want to think about stuff that's going to make us uncomfortable. So if you're an adult and you're constantly avoiding those overwhelming things that happen in your life, and let's say you go from relationship to relationship and you may be physically abused. Let's say you're a domestic violence victim. If your kids are watching you, not only are you adding on to their ACEs, but you are not healing from your ACEs. And the not healing part is where we get these physical diseases from. So that's why I like this study, because a lot of times adults, so many heart attacks, strokes, or just different things that we die from. And it's just like, what happened in your childhood when you were 7?
Right.
It makes you think the way that you're thinking.
Wow. It's kind of sad. That the reason I think it's sad is because when we're children, a lot of what's happening to us is beyond our control.
Yeah.
And then how it has a negative effect on us in our adulthood is like we didn't even have an opportunity to offset this. It happened to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're saying that even adults should be taking that. Well, especially adults need to be taking.
Especially. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that they're not passing on their trauma to their children or the young people watching them.
Yes. And when I say passing it on, I think adults don't recognize that kids in your household, they're not listening to what you say. They're watching what you do. They're watching how you respond to overwhelming situations, not just in your life, because it's also occurring in their life. They're right there with you. And I think adults forget that. But if they see you get overwhelmed and you're going to go hit a blunt or you're going to go smoke or, you're yelling to the point that you cannot calm down, they're going to think that's okay. And that's how you respond to stress. And if you as an adult do not stop responding to your stress in those unhealthy ways, you will definitely develop these physical illnesses that are, listed in the ACES study.
You just said a mouthful right there.
Really, really. And like I said, that's stuff that you just see. To be honest, and as we're talking about this, I can't help but think of my own childhood. And I can't honestly say that my parents, that's another thing, having both parents in my house, was something that, I didn't realize at the time was almost like a luxury. A lot of my friends didn't have a father in the house, and I didn't realize that. But it's crazy how, like you mentioned, people responding to stressful things and lashing out, going to smoke or drink or whatever. It's so common. And like I said, and their kids are doing it at a young age. Not even when they get older. They're not waiting until they get grown. They're waiting until like middle school, high school. They smoking cigarettes or talking about they need to go smoke or something. Like that. I don't even know the real reason why you need to go smoke. They just want to go.
Why you need?
Like, what are you really talking about? So that's a great point that you just brought up.
Can you go over the experiences again? Like, if you've gone through these experiences, then each one of those gives a point. Because what I'm trying to do is like get the listeners and the audience to think about their own life
with it,
and to say like, all right, okay, so I got all these points. Maybe I need to go talk to a counselor because the show is about improving your mental health. And so if what it's not a if, I know what you're saying is facts, that unaddressed issues carries over into the next generation. This, that nature versus nurture type of situation.
Yes.
And if you're sitting here watching this and you're like, man, I got a score of 5 or 6 and I have children, maybe I might need to go to a therapist. So can you run down the list again for the listeners to be able to connect with these experiences? Yeah.
So there are, and I'll break it down a little bit further. There are 10 types of childhood experiences that are measured in the ACES study, and they're broken down by 5 by 5. The first 5 are personal things that can happen to you, like physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, and emotional neglect.
Hold on, Sherri. Hold on.
Go ahead. Want me to say it again?
Slow it down. Just slow it down just a tad. So you said physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, any type of emotional or psychological abuse. I added that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And physical neglect.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the 5 personal. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. We got it. We just want to make sure everybody clearly hears it, because for real, like, this is probably going to really help some people.
Yeah.
And so what are the other 5?
So the other 5 are related to other family members. And that is, as we're thinking about kids, think about a kid who has a parent who's an alcoholic, a mother who's a victim of domestic violence, a family member who's in jail, a family member diagnosed with a mental illness, and the disappearance of a family member or parent, the disappearance of a parent through divorce, death, or abandonment.
Wow. So the other 5 are, you said, as it relates to other family members?
Yeah.
Like,
or just family members.
Just people in
Yeah.
your family. So that means if I'm Eric K. Part, I had an uncle who's an alcoholic. That's an adverse childhood experience for me. What if I never see him?
Yes.
Or what if I only interact with him on Christmas or holidays? Am I still considered?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think it's situational in that regard, because when I say family member, now directly, if your parent is experiencing one of those things, it is going to directly affect you. Indirectly, it depends on your relationship with that uncle and how often you have interaction with that uncle.
Right. Now, if that uncle stayed in your home with you,
Yes,
and then then you'll probably
that makes a difference.
Des, what's your ACES score right now? You've been keeping count.
And
So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got all 5 of the family member ones.
And to be honest, mine is low.
Mine's not low.
Mine is not high. Mine is not high. So I mean, like, as I'm thinking, especially with the personal ones, well, I'm also thinking about the family ones.
My score.
So I never had a family member that was considered an alcoholic, or I never was neglected as a child. You know, yeah. So my score is kind of low.
And the thing about it is, so you grew up in a family with both parents.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a family with a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sherri, does that have anything to do with it? Well, obviously so, because if you're missing a parent because of divorce, separation, or death, that counts.
Yes, it counts. Now, mind you, a healthy parent matters. So you can go through any one of these things. You can experience a trauma, but if you experience it in that family member, that parent, or that caregiver, that person you're looking to show you how to control your own emotional health or mental health, if they're handling it in a healthy way, they get you counseling early, you're kind of nipping things in the bud because you're addressing it.
I see. So what if you have a high ACEs score in your adulthood? That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to attract some of these physical ailments, right? That is, of course, if you are not doing anything about it. Let's say if you're not doing, you got all this high score. Like mine looks like it's a 7. Honest, it's 7 or 8.
That's where I'm at.
That's yours, or is it high? What'd you say?
I'm at a 7.
Yeah, and so with my score, it's like, man, am I going to start having issues? You know.
So the thing with ACEs is, it's not it. The more you know, the more you can prevent it. So if these are the thing I like about the study, it's a preventative thing. So if you know this, and if you know these things are happening in your family, you can say, that is how my mom or my dad or my uncle handled their stress. And this is kind of how their health followed in line. And like, hey, the doctors are telling me similar things. Cut down on my sugars, cut down on the stress in my life, or just different like that. So it's definitely a preventative study. And the more you know, the more you can prevent these health occurrences happening to you down the road.
So how? Because if the listeners are like me and you, Sherri, they just did this and they're like, my score is high. How do you offset the likelihood that you're going to have these issues?
So when I work with my clients who have high ACEs scores, obviously that's trauma. So in Black community, therapy is necessary. You need to be with a professional because there is this technique called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT. And it basically is a way that the thing that I take from it and I teach all my clients is a triangle. Your thoughts control your feelings, and that controls your behavior. So when you go through a trauma and you do not process it, it affects your brain. Your brain controls everything in your body, including, like, my nose is itching. My brain is automatically sending signals throughout my body at your nose. With TFCBT, you're addressing the different traumas. So you're taking these things one by one and no longer having that person avoid it. You're having them address it. And a trauma is like a wound. If you have a wound and you don't do anything to it, it's just going to get infected and get worse and worse. But if you actually treat it, put some Neosporin on it and some alcohol, it's going to hurt at first, but it's going to get better.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we just kind of take it one by one in therapy. We can't run from our ACEs. We have to face them.
Eventually. And so you said you would address each one. Let's say you had a parent or a family member that was an alcoholic, and you had, you know, another person that was incarcerated. So you're going to break down each one of those. What have you found to be helpful in helping people kind of, you know, heal from the wounds as you described them? What are some techniques? That's what I'm looking for. What are some techniques that you have found helpful as it relates to, specifically to African Americans, people of color, Black people?
Purpose. I teach people, my therapeutic way is called Illyrian therapy. And with Illyrian, it's kind of like your life experiences make you who you are. And that's what I teach people. Don't dwell on the negative, because even if your mom was an alcoholic or your dad was incarcerated, they probably had some ACEs too that they didn't tell you about, because they're trying to be strong as a parent, which is what parents do, but which is the most unhealthiest part of parenting that I tell parents.
So hold on, let's pause.
I forgot the question.
I'm a parent.
Uh-huh.
And you said that's the most unhealthiest thing to do as a parent, is not to talk to your kids about your ACEs?
No, it is to talk to your kids about your ACEs. But so often parents, they don't know that they have them, or they don't see it as important, and they just try and, you know, put on a brave face and go through it without showing their kids. This affects me, and this is in our family. And so
we're supposed to, as parents, we're supposed to show or talk to our kids about the things that have happened to us in our lives?
Yes, definitely.
I agree. And again, a lot of this stuff, you know, as a therapist, yes, I know these things, but it's about making sure that the audience picking it up.
No.
And I ultimately think that just hearing people's experiences is, for me at least, is like one of the best learning lessons. I know I'm 2 years in of marriage right now, so like some of the best advice that I received were people that gave me real experiences, other than just telling me what I should do or what I should do, what you're gonna run into. But if somebody was able to tell me what, you know, kind of happened in their marriage and how they dealt with it, how they did this, you know, I was like, okay, I can kind of take that. You know, I may not do it exactly what they're saying word from word, but, you know, I can take that and apply it into my life. But the same thing with anything. I mean, not just my marriage, but just any habits, you know, the stuff that I'm learning from Eric. Because like I said, I'm not a therapist. So, you know, I'm soaking up a lot of this information that both of you are giving to me at this moment. So it's like, oh, wow, you know, I'm thinking about, and look, I don't have children. You know, I'm thinking about, like, if I was to get children, how do I deal with that? I'm thinking about, do I talk about some traumatic experiences in my life, you know, or what? But like, I feel like sharing those experiences are the best part of learning. Yeah, you know, your own life. So.
Well, and let me say this too, because you brought up a great point. As you're raising kids, our kids go through different lifespans. Like, they go through different milestones in life and different levels. Depending on when a certain trauma happened to you, if you can talk about it with your kid, that is what's healthy. But sometimes we have parents, because they're not dealing with their own trauma, they put up defenses. And their defense, like, oh, don't talk to them. Don't talk about that. Don't touch that topic. And if the kid's like, why can't I touch, you know, I see Uncle Junebug drink every Sunday. Why can't I talk about that kind of thing? But because it's so overwhelming and hurtful for parents, a lot of times parents just shut down. And, you know, they'll tell a kid, stay in a child's place. Don't talk about that kind of thing.
Right. Oh, man, that was I used to hit all the time. You see grown folks talking.
I bet you did.
No, I did, yeah.
Be seen, not heard.
Right. A child is to be seen and not heard.
Uh-huh.
Y'all know y'all heard that growing up.
Yeah.
Des, you don't know about that though.
Okay.
You know,
see, every time, Eric.
Your mom and daddy, man, they don't seem like they would say that to you. I know your parents.
I'm gonna just let you think that. I'm just gonna let you think that.
Look, I'm not even gonna fool myself. I know better than that.
Come on now.
I definitely do. Wow. So ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. You should get the test. like, can you go online and do it? Because, or does this need to be an assessment that you do with a professional, or can you just go online and just look up an ACES survey and take it yourself?
You can actually go online and look up an ACES survey and take it yourself. But I guess I kind of want to just, if you do that, you still need to connect with a mental health provider so you can make sure you're processing those experiences in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because the thing with processing trauma, how I say it's like a wound, you have to address it. And if you got to touch it, you got to get in there. And with the trauma, we're trying to avoid it. And so you have to be with somebody safe, because if you bring up, depending on what it is, especially in my own life, like I have definitely been to the point of trying to commit suicide before. And I'm like, this isn't me. Where is this coming from? And that was like a wake up experience for me as well as a mental health provider. Like, you need to be in therapy kind of thing. So you don't know what, especially the longer you hold it in, you don't know what it's going to bring up in you. So you definitely want to make sure you're not doing it on your own and you're with somebody safe so you can really process it.
Wow. What if you have children and you got a question, Des? You wanted to jump in?
I was going to say where can, like, what's the best place for people to go to like receive these type of tests and get the help that they need?
Now, and I will say, depending on who your doctor is, you can definitely bring it up to your physical medical PCP doctor. They can hook you up with mental health services. They can, link you to a right therapist for it as well. Even your physical health doctors can provide mental health medication to you, but in that, they also should be referring you to a therapist as well.
Gotcha.
Even if you don't have a PCP, because some people don't have insurance like that, you can go to Psychology Today, look up a therapist and do it that way. Try-on therapy is something new, but it definitely, in our African-American community, it hooks us up with therapists who look like us and have been through similar things. So it's also, a lot of times I hear people say that therapist can relate to anything that I had going on. In fact, they made it worse.
Right. And you say
with somebody who's the right fit.
And you say you do in-home therapy as well. Like, what is that process as opposed to, going to see somebody in an office or something like that? What's the process of being an in-home therapist?
So when it comes to levels of care with therapy, there are 4 levels of care. I'm saying it off the top of my head, so I may get it wrong. The first level usually looks like outpatient, where you just walk in and out as needed. The second level is a little bit more severe, like you may be assigned to a therapist or assigned to a program that you have to complete. Intensive in-home therapy is the third level, to where we are the highest level of care that you can get in-home without being in a facility, in a mental health facility. And for kids, that may look like a group home, that may be looking like hospitalization, or just maybe a partial hospital program. Actually are removed from the home because they're a danger to themselves or the people in their environment.
So if you have kids and you want to get them checked out for ACEs, you can just take them to their primary care doctor whenever they go for their annual physical or whatever, and say, hey, do you need to request it? Because I thought that doctors were doing that on their own, the screening, or that's something that you need to ask for.
From my experience, I think it just varies doctor to doctor. Now, obviously, you can ask if your doctor has heard about it. And if your doctor has not heard about ACEs, get a new doctor, period. The study has been going on long enough that anybody who's educated within the last 5 years knows about it.
Right.
But when you go to a doctor and you start describing mental health symptoms such as stress, not being able to think, not being able to eat, or isolating yourself and different things like that, they sometimes will unconsciously ask you the ACEs questions without you even knowing it. But if you want to specifically say, I want to know my ACEs, or I took this ACEs test and this is my score, where can I go from here? Your doctor should definitely be able to help you with that.
This is so good, because people just don't know. It's like we're living our lives and we've normalized a lot of behaviors that are ACEs. We've normalized it. Oh, I got a drunk uncle, or it's just the way they are, or my uncle been locked up my whole life, or my daddy been in prison forever. You know what I'm saying? My parents divorced. It's like we've normalized.
Yeah.
We've normalized trauma.
And
it's not good. And so a lot of times there's people in our communities who have undiagnosed issues because we think it's one,
yes,
don't think it's a problem. We've normalized it. And two, there's access to healthcare is another thing, but that's a whole nother thing. So yeah, I just think this is one of those interviews that we've done, Des, that is going to touch with a lot of people. Probably almost everybody that listens to our show will be able to relate to this. And we hope that you will take some action to kind of offset some of these issues, because like Sherri's telling us, I'm thinking about how ACES is probably affecting what's going on with COVID-19 right now, and how people of color and Black people are dying at higher rates. I'm wondering if any of this has anything to do with ACES.
Well, and I don't want to interrupt you, but you brought up a good point. Normalizing. The way to normalize anything is get with somebody who's been through what you've been through. Yeah. And if the person is like, well, let's cope. I cope by my pain by smoking a cigarette.
Right.
Or I cope by my pain by listening to this or doing this. We want to feel like everything's okay. We don't want to feel like this happened. And, we don't want to deal with those uncomfortable emotions. But if we can if we can talk to somebody who can say, I went through something similar, that normalizes it for us.
Yeah.
But we also need to realize, like, you went through what I went through, but are you dealing with it in a healthy way, or are you just kind of still in that survival mode and trying not to think about it, but just self-medicate or something other than that, or pray it away, which is not necessarily dealing with it either.
Right.
I believe in praying though, but I believe in praying
definitely,
and getting some help
and the action. Yeah, God is not here walking with us on earth. Jesus did it once, but I think you said it, Desmond, as far as listening to other people's stories. That's all the Bible is, and this is just me talking, nothing therapeutic, but the Bible is a collection of stories. So when I say we all have a purpose, we're walking out our stories just like everybody else we read about. So God's not here walking with us, but he speaks to us through other people and what they've gone through. And that's why everybody's here. We all have a story. We all have something that we've been through. And once we are able to find the positive in it, then we can help somebody else find the positive in their journey who's going through something similar, or maybe just even going through a struggle, but to know like, hey, if they did it, I can do it too. Because maybe my situation isn't as bad as theirs, or my situation is worse. But I know, like, man, they aren't even as strong as I am. But if they could get through that little thing, I know I can handle this big thing. So mental health is definitely important. And when it comes to kids, they're watching how we deal with everything. So we are paving the way for generations under us, especially as African Americans.
All right, Sherri, coming through with a word. That's what man.
Come through. Sherri, you got any final words for the listeners?
That was the final word. Did you hear it?
I feel like that was it.
That was it. I had to ask. And I don't know, sometimes people have things that they want to say. I don't want to miss nothing. But that was it. That was excellent.
Thank you guys for this experience. Thank you guys for this mental health experience, and me just being able to talk about something that I love. And if you're listening, check on your ACEs. Don't be afraid. If we're going to normalize anything, let's normalize mental health and know that it's okay not to be okay. And when you're not okay, it's okay to say that and talk to somebody who's safe.
Right.
You got it.
All right. Well,
I think that's a good place to end.
For sure.
Big shout out to Sherri Jones for coming through with us today on this.
Thank y'all.
Social distance episode.
Yes. I hope y'all staying safe out there.
To the listeners, as always, we appreciate you guys. For those, if this is your first time checking us out, you can get this show sent to your phone every week by sending a text to EMH with I'm sorry, I said it wrong.
You said it wrong. You did it.
31996. That's 31996 with the letters EMH.
There you go.
Sent to your phone every week. You can also find us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Experience Mental Health. We're all over Instagram at EMH Now. We got a Facebook page, Experience Mental Health. We're everywhere. So wherever you are, we want to connect with you. We appreciate you guys being a part of this tribe. And hey, I gotta ask you this. You got any final words?
Nope.
It never does. Hey, that's going to be it for us today, guys. Make it a great day. We'll see you next time.
All right. Peace. Hey guys, if you really enjoyed that episode, make sure that you like and comment, as well as subscribe to the Experience Mental Health Podcast, because this is the #1 mental health podcast in the nation.